Luke slammed the door behind him, and for a second, the apartment felt smaller, heavier, almost suffocating. His voice cut through the tension like a warning nobody wanted to hear. I can't do this anymore. Madlin froze, mascara smudged from the last fight, her mind racing between disbelief and strategy. You could almost see her weighing her options. Call a friend, scroll for backup, or just let him stew. But something was different this time. He wasn't yelling. He wasn't begging. He just looked empty, drained in a way that no argument or grand gesture could fix it. A few weeks ago, the same man would have spent hours crafting the perfect apology or buying something expensive to smooth things over. Designer puppy, weekend getaways, extravagant dinners, all tools in his arsenal to earn peace, to buy affection that felt conditional from the start. But peace bought with money is a dangerous currency. Have you ever stopped to think how long you'd keep paying for a smile that disappears the moment your credit card rests? Madlin didn't shout either. She had learned the power of silence. Her cold shoulder wasn't accidental. It was deliberate, calibrated. Every sigh, every small glance, every half smile was a negotiation. She didn't need to speak to assert dominance. And Luke? He thought he understood her, until the room reminded him that some things can't be solved with effort or cash. Meanwhile, oceans away, Anthony was facing a version of the same nightmare with Mano. A fresh start in France, new apartment, new routines, but the same invisible tug of war. He tried to spark laughter, recreate memories, and show love through gestures only he understood. A mime performance in the middle of a street, feeding her favorite cheeses, planning elaborate, cute moments, each one landing flat, rejected, or worse, turning into public humiliation. The same pattern emerged. One partner performs endlessly to earn affection while the other evaluates, tests, and holds control like a shield. Why do we fall for the illusion that effort equals love? Back with Luke and Madlin, the early warning signs were impossible to ignore. Apologies came with receipts. Gifts were transactions. The puppy that was supposed to soften her heart now chewed the lace off a wedding dress, symbolizing all the energy, money, and pride he had poured into a relationship that seemed designed to drain him. Did he even see it? Maybe, maybe not. You can be blinded when your love language is giving and the other person's is taking control. Madlin's gestures, or lack thereof, were equally strategic. Small kindnesses were calculated. Smiles were rewards. Complaints were tests. Every interaction asked a question. Who holds the real power here? Luke's instinct was to fix, to chase, to make everything right because he believed love should be earned through effort. But Madlin, knowingly or not, had flipped the script. For her, control felt safe. For him, peace felt elusive, temporary. Like a fragile illusion held together by credit cards and apologies. The fights over money were just the tip of the iceberg. Behind each argument was jealousy, mistrust, and a pattern that replayed itself endlessly. Every disagreement over spending revealed deeper fractures. Whose needs mattered, whose feelings counted, and whose patience had a price tag. Luke's attempts to smooth things over often backfired. He gave more and more, thinking it would tip the balance. She pushed back, testing boundaries, reminding him that affection wasn't automatic, that love had a cost she would set. You have to ask yourself, would you keep paying for peace if it never lasted? Would you exhaust yourself trying to be the hero in a story where the other person controls the bone? Narrative? That is exactly where Luke and Anthony find themselves. Two men, oceans apart, both trapped in the same exhausting loop. Perform, apologize, gift, negotiate, repeat. One thinks affection can be bought. The other is learning that control feels safer than vulnerability. It isn't just about the fights. It is about the little cracks that grew bigger over time. Smiles that cost more than they were worth. Gestures that backfired. Trust that was never fully returned. Both Luke and Anthony were chasing something fleeting. Both were trying to solve a puzzle that had no solution. And the signs were there for anyone paying attention. Escalated arguments over trivial matters, strategic silences, and small tests disguised as normal behavior. Each warning flag was a piece of the pattern, a pattern that would only repeat until someone finally refused to play along. And this is where the tension begins to climb. Because the stage is set. Money has replaced intimacy, apologies have turned into debt, and both relationships teeter on the edge. One slip, one reaction, one word could ignite the kind of explosion that fans will be talking about for weeks. And trust me, the first bomb is coming, and it's going to be messy. Luke sits on the couch, scrolling through old photos, remembering laughter that used to come freely. Every gift he ever gave, every word of apology, every moment of trying now feels heavy, like a ledger keeping track of emotional transactions. Meanwhile, Madlin observes quietly, aware of the shift, savoring the balance of power she's cultivated. And across the ocean, Anthony's mime performance lingers in memory, a public emblem of private exhaustion. Both men are learning the same brutal truth. Affection that requires performance is temporary, peace that comes with effort is fragile, and love built on fear of loss is a debt no one can repay fully. The question now hangs in the air. Who will crack first? Who will finally walk away? And who will keep performing until there's nothing left to give? The opening acts of this drama have laid the foundation, and the emotional stakes are higher than ever. You know the type. Every gift, every gesture, every apology is a test, and failure feels inevitable. Hold on to that thought, because what happens next will turn the tension into a full-blown storm and challenge everything you thought you knew about love and control. Luke stared at the small, carefully wrapped box on the kitchen counter, heart hammering. Inside was a puppy he had picked out after weeks of researching, thinking it would finally bring a smile to Madlin's face. He imagined her squeal of delight, the kind of reaction that would melt the tension for a few precious hours. But when Madlin walked into the room, her expression wasn't joy, it was scrutiny. She tilted her head, inspected the puppy, and her eyes flicked toward him with something like calculation. Did she see the effort or only the attempt to buy peace? Every gift he gave, every grand gesture had started to feel like currency, and the returns were unpredictable at best. The puppy moment that should have been a breakthrough instead became a lesson in emotional risk. Luke, the fixer, had invested heavily, time, money, thought, hoping affection would follow automatically. But in the world of transactional love, even the purest gesture can backfire. Madlin's silence, her measured steps around the puppy, hinted at the reality Luke had been avoiding. Performance and affection were no longer aligned. If you've been following, you know this part hits hard because it isn't just a dog. It's a symbol of energy poured into a relationship that measures love in tests rather than trust. Meanwhile, Anthony was facing his own escalating drama. He had prepared a mime act for Mano in the streets of Paris, expecting laughter and maybe a playful compliment. Instead, Mano stood stiff, arms crossed, her smile delayed, her laughter forced. The gesture, meant to charm and entertain, transformed into a public stage for judgment. Anthony realized that no matter how elaborate the effort, the reaction was controlled by someone else's need for validation or control. His heart sank. Why did love have to feel like an audition? Hold on, because what happens next pushes the emotional tension even further and makes you question the cost of affection. Back with Luke and Madlin, the transactional pattern deepened. Every apology, every gift, every small act of care carried an invisible price tag. Luke would try to smooth over tension with words or material gestures, but the relief was temporary. It was like patching cracks in a dam that was designed to leak. Madlin didn't need a gift, she needed control. Each of Luke's offerings became a mirror for his desperation and her unspoken agenda. You start to wonder, when does giving stop being love and start becoming a kind of emotional labor? A week later, Luke tried another approach. A heartfelt note, meticulously written, meant to convey sincerity and vulnerability. But Madlin's reaction was again ambiguous. She nodded, skimmed the words, and walked away. Luke felt the sting of rejection, but not of the person, of the system. Love had become conditional, and every gesture felt like another installment in a debt he could never repay. The fixation on fixing the relationship had blinded him to the growing pattern. Affection that must be earned is rarely free, and when you try too hard, it often creates new tension. Anthony's mime act, on the other hand, had a ripple effect online. Fans commented, some sympathetic, some critical, but every reaction only amplified the pressure. He was performing not just for Mano, but for the audience who had started measuring love in views and likes. The pressure became unbearable, and he started questioning the dynamic. Could affection ever feel genuine when it is constantly evaluated? Could love survive when one partner's needs dictate the other's actions in a public forum? Brace yourself, because the next mini cliffhanger is about a small gesture, yet spiraling into a major confrontation that shocks everyone. Luke attempted a late-night conversation, hoping honesty would break the cycle. I just want us to feel okay, he said softly, voice heavy. Madlin's eyes narrowed. Do you really think giving more will fix anything? She asked. The question cut deeper than any fight ever had. Luke realized that no matter how much he gave, her affection wasn't a guarantee. He was trapped in the fixer loop. The more effort, the more emotional exhaustion, the less return. The dynamic wasn't a one-off, it was structural, repeating patterns rooted in unmet needs and past traumas. Meanwhile, Anthony tried to talk to Mano after the mime incident. His words stumbled over themselves, uncertain, nervous. Mano's response was polite but dismissive, leaving him bewildered. The public performance had become a private lesson. In relationships driven by validation seeking, even thoughtful gestures are subject to interpretation and control. Both men face the same brutal truth. Giving endlessly does not always result in connection. Effort doesn't guarantee love, it only guarantees fatigue. And here's where it gets more complicated. Each of these mini moments, the puppy, the mime, the apologies, acts like a trigger. Small sparks light fires that could explode at any time. If you've been following this story, you know it's a slow burn. One gesture can set off a week of tension. One word can make months of effort feel meaningless. The fixation on control versus the fixation on fixing is a game neither man asked to play, but one they cannot seem to stop. So stay with me because the next turn reveals how minor incidents mask deeper emotional warfare and set the stage for a confrontation no one expected. By the end of this act, the audience can see the relentless push and pull. Luke, the fixer, and Madlin, the validation seeker, are trapped in a repetitive cycle of effort, measurement, and disappointment. Anthony and Mano mirror the same dynamics across borders, showing that these patterns aren't isolated. They are behavioral templates that repeat until someone stops participating. Each mini drama, each reaction, each attempt at love becomes a high stakes game of prediction, endurance, and emotional calculation. Both couples illustrate a harsh lesson. Affection that requires constant performance loses its warmth, gestures become transactions, and love begins to feel like work. These are not simple fights or personality clashes. These are structural patterns embedded in how each person interacts, fears, and desires control. And once you see it, it becomes impossible to unsee. Get ready, because the next segment dives even deeper into these emotional patterns and teases the confrontation everyone's been waiting for, where performance collides with reality. Luke sat on the edge of his bed, phone in hand, scrolling through old texts and photos. His eyes were tired, movements slow. The puppy slept at his feet, oblivious to the tension, and yet its presence made the silence feel heavier. Luke had poured energy, money, and emotion into gestures meant to buy affection, yet each one landed with a thud. He thought love could be bought. She thought peace came with a price. The disconnect between intention and outcome had transformed everyday moments into a quiet battlefield. You could almost feel the weight of months of unreciprocated effort pressing down on him. Meanwhile, across town, Anthony was in his bathroom, scrubbing off the mime makeup he had worn earlier that day. The paint stained his fingers, a literal mark of his labor for someone else's approval. The laughter he had hoped for was replaced by tension. The claps by silent. His reflection stared back at him, exhausted, defeated, and strangely invisible. The mime wasn't just a performance, it was a metaphor for his role in the relationship. Every act of care became a spectacle, every gesture a gamble. If you've been following, you know these silent moments are where the real heartbreak hides, in the spaces between words and reactions. Financial stress started creeping in too. Luke's gifts, trips, and attempts at grand gestures had drained savings that once felt secure. Each purchase had been justified with hope. Maybe this one would break the cycle. But the returns were emotional, not tangible. Emotional exhaustion, when layered with financial strain, creates a cocktail of anxiety that feeds on itself. The wedding countdown added another layer of pressure. Every day felt like a race against time, and yet the relationship's rhythm remained out of sync. Hold tight, because the next scene reveals how small gestures spiral into bigger crises that no one saw coming. Even minor incidents now carried outsized significance. Luke accidentally left the puppy's food bowl in the wrong spot. Madlin noticed immediately, her reaction sharp, but quiet. And Luke felt like he had failed a test that had no rules. Each interaction was measured, judged, and cataloged, creating a landscape of tension disguised as normalcy. Anthony, on the other hand, tried to make a simple gesture for Mano, coffee in the morning, but she was distracted, distant. The gesture, which should have been a spark of connection, fizzled. Every attempt to create warmth seemed to meet resistance, leaving both men questioning the very purpose of their efforts. The psychological strain was subtle but pervasive. Quiet heartbreak is different from explosive fights. There is no audience, no dramatic cliffhanger. It is the slow erosion of hope. Luke's eyes lingered on Madlin's favorite scarf, now folded neatly on the chair. He remembered a time when small things had meant shared happiness. Now each token felt like a reminder of what wasn't working. The emotional labor had become invisible, like he was running on empty while trying to maintain a facade. Anthony wiped the last of the white paint from his hands, realizing that even when he tried to be entertaining, meaningful connection was fleeting. Watch closely because what seems like a calm moment is about to trigger an unexpected confrontation that will shatter the fragile balance. The countdown to the wedding intensified every interaction. Plans, as budgets and expectations collided. Luke had organized flowers, a photographer, even a surprise dance rehearsal. Yet each effort highlighted the emotional disconnect instead of masking it. He began to feel a creeping sense of futility. The validation he sought was fleeting, unpredictable, and increasingly unattainable. Anthony faced the same cycle. His efforts to perform or entertain were met with cold acknowledgement, leaving him to wonder if love had become a scoreboard measured in reactions rather than feelings. Quiet heartbreak also exposes the deeper patterns in behavior. Luke's attempts at intimacy had shifted from affection to transactions. Gifts replaced conversations, apologies became investments, and affection was conditional. Madlin's approach was the mirror. She tested, withdrew, and measured. Anthony and Mano were playing the same game across borders, showing that these dynamics repeat when underlying needs and fears go unaddressed. uh, Watching the couples, you begin to see that chaos isn't always loud. Sometimes it whispers, quietly reshaping every interaction. Financial strain, wedding stress, and emotional depletion combined into a perfect storm. Luke found himself staring at his empty wallet and the overflowing calendar of commitments he had made to maintain peace. Anthony counted the euros he had spent on props, costumes, and gifts, questioning if it had been worth it. Both men realized that effort without reciprocation eventually becomes self-destructive. And so, emotional fatigue manifests in tiny ways. A sigh here, a glance there, a missed smile that carries months of disappointment. Keep watching because the next twist changes everything. The tipping point where patience runs out and the illusion of control collapses. The subtle heartbreak also illuminated moments of stark contrast. The explosive arguments from earlier episodes had faded into background noise replaced by a steady, quiet ache. Every unacknowledged gesture, every underappreciated effort created a tension that was cumulative. The couples were trapped in cycles, but the trap wasn't visible. It existed in their routines, gestures, and silences. Luke scrolling alone, Anthony cleaning off mime makeup. These moments were the real battlefield. They revealed exhaustion, disillusionment, and the emotional bankruptcy of giving endlessly for conditional love. Even in moments of calm, stakes escalated. Wedding plans became a timer, financial strain became a shadow, and emotional depletion became a constant companion. The quiet moments were deceptively powerful, showing that heartbreak isn't always loud. Sometimes it whispers in the small, everyday moments that make us question if all the effort was ever worth it. And just when you think the cycle might break, something unexpected is always around the corner. By the end of this segment, viewers understand the full weight of emotional labor in these relationships. Gifts, apologies, and performances are not just actions. They are signals, tests, and currency in a system where genuine connection struggles to survive. The quiet heartbreak is not a failure of love, but a failure of alignment. It is the slow revelation that even the most sincere efforts cannot always bridge fundamental differences in needs, expectations, and emotional patterns. Stay tuned because the final act will bring the climactic confrontation, shocking reversals, and emotional payoffs that redefine everything the couples have gone through. Patterns in relationships are rarely random. Luke and Madlin, Anthony and Mano, they are examples, not exceptions. Look closer and you see why the same dynamics repeat. Early experiences, fear of abandonment, and coping mechanisms learned long before either couple met. Luke's relentless giving is more than generosity. It's a pattern shaped by a need to earn approval to avoid rejection. Madlin's withdrawal, her measured affection, mirrors the protective walls built from past hurts. Every gift Luke bought, every apology he rehearsed, was a test of whether love could be secured through effort alone. Would you stay if affection always came with a bill? Anthony and Mano demonstrate the same rhythm. His gestures, exaggerated performances, and elaborate displays are attempts to prove value. Her reactions, sometimes distant, sometimes intense, are protective routines that signal control and safety. Across continents and cultures, the loop repeats. One partner invests, the other regulates, the first recalibrates, and the cycle spins again. It is both mesmerizing and exhausting to watch because it's easy to sympathize with either side, but understanding the behavioral loop explains the inevitable tension. Pay attention because the next moment will reveal cracks in the patterns that have kept them trapped. Social media doesn't help. Fans dissect every scene, every look, every online post becomes evidence. Clips of Luke pacing with the puppy, Madlin's subtle sighs, Anthony wiping off mime paint, they go viral with commentary ranging from sympathy to outrage. Some fans cheer the fixer for effort, others side with the validation seeker for self preservation. Each reaction adds external pressure, subtly influencing how the couples behave on camera. In a way, the audience is an invisible third party feeding the cycles without ever touching the relationships directly. Many cliffhangers emerge in small shifts. Madlin pauses before responding to Luke's text. Anthony hesitates mid-gesture for Mano. Those micro moments hint at turning points, behavioral adjustments that could either bridge the gap or widen it further. Are they recognizing the loop and starting to break it? Or are these moments just illusions of progress? Viewers who have followed closely know that the smallest reaction can signal massive change or the calm before a bigger storm. Watch closely because the next slip could upend everything. Childhood trauma plays a subtle but powerful role. For Luke, needing constant affirmation feels natural because it was how safety was measured early on. For Madlin, emotional withdrawal protects against unpredictability because vulnerability once led to pain. Anthony learned that performance earns attention and approval. Mano relies on distance and control to feel secure. When these patterns collide in adult relationships, it creates a feedback loop. One partner gives, one evaluates, the giver adjusts, the cycle spins. It's fascinating to watch, frustrating to endure, and emotionally intense for both parties. The universality of these dynamics becomes clearer when you compare the couples. Different faces, different countries, different stories, but these emotional patterns are eerily similar. Both relationships rely on a currency of affection that is never guaranteed. Both have cycles of escalation and withdrawal. Both are haunted by past experiences and shaped by fear of loss. It begs the question, how much can effort alone fix? Can generosity ever replace true understanding? Or is every act of love doomed to be measured, assessed, and repaid? Keep watching, because a seemingly small event is about to force a revelation that could change the course of both relationships. Fans online notice subtle behavior shifts and immediately speculate. Luke's slightly sharper tone, Madlin's delayed smiles, Anthony's rare pause mid-performance, they become evidence of underlying cracks. Each microchange raises anticipation. Is this the moment they finally confront the root of their conflict, or is it just another temporary adjustment that will fade under wassion? Stress? The tension builds because these tiny glimpses of change are hard to interpret and they hint at a dramatic payoff yet to come. Even with awareness, breaking the loop is painful. Every habitual response carries emotional weight. Luke wants to withdraw, yet guilt keeps him moving forward. Madlin wants peace, yet fear keeps her distant. Anthony wants to entertain and connect, yet past disappointment keeps him performing for validation. Mano craves safety, yet intimacy feels risky. Each behavioral loop reinforces itself until one moment breaks the cycle or escalates it to crisis. Brace yourself because the next unexpected action will challenge the delicate balance these couples have been maintaining. What social media and fan commentary fail to capture is the quiet internal calculus each person performs daily. Every gesture is measured, every word considered. Small errors or omissions feel catastrophic. The pressure of public scrutiny compounds private stress. Relationships that might survive in private become strained under the lens of cameras, commentary, and expectation. Luke and Madlin's fights about money, Anthony and Mano's disagreements over performance, each is a symptom, not a cause. Understanding the behavioral loops is the key to seeing beyond the drama. Then there are moments of foreshadowing. A look, a pause, a text left unanswered. They signal that even subtle changes can ripple. Luke hesitates before offering another gift. Anthony almost abandons a planned performance. Madlin sighs but doesn't text back immediately. Mano considers interrupting but stops. Each of these micro moments carries suspense. Will they reset the cycle or shatter it? The audience, having witnessed months of patterns, knows that tipping points can arrive without warning. Stay tuned because the upcoming twist will reveal betrayal and test the limits of patience, loyalty, and trust. By analyzing these loops, we see that the drama isn't just for entertainment, it is a reflection of repeated human behavior under pressure. The couples are mirrors, showing us how fear and past trauma and learned mechanisms can dictate reactions more than intention. Effort alone cannot rewrite deep-seated patterns. Affection that is conditional never fully satisfies the giver. Withdrawal that protects never fully reassures the other. Yet understanding these cycles gives insight. Why tension escalates, why gestures go unappreciated, why even love feels transactional. Hold on, because the next reveal will hit hard. It will challenge assumptions, uncover hidden truths, and put both couples on the edge of emotional collapse. Madeline finally lets a crack show, a fleeting smile, a softer tone, a pause that hints at reconsideration. Luke notices immediately, heart racing, convinced that this moment is different. Could it be real this time? Could the constant giving, the careful apologies, and the little sacrifices have finally broken through? For a brief moment, it seems like the storm is over, that maybe the endless cycle of tension, tests, and emotional labor has paused. But anyone who's been watching closely knows better. Temporary peace often masks deeper unrest, and the quietest moments can carry the loudest warnings. Luke leans in with gestures, gifts, and verbal affirmations, thinking each act is cementing progress. The puppy, the handwritten notes, even the carefully prepared meal all become tools in his arsenal to secure affection. Madeline accepts some of it, nods politely, but the underlying tension is still there and visible but potent. She shows a glimpse of vulnerability, yes, but it's fleeting and carefully controlled. Her walls remain intact, even as Luke interprets this as breakthrough. Notice this because the next moment could completely flip the script on his assumptions. This pattern of temporary harmony is deceptive. But one apology seems to smooth over a fight, one shared laugh makes Luke believe reconciliation is genuine, and one acknowledgement from Madeline convinces him he has won. Yet the pattern has always been the same, a brief lull, a sense of hope, and then a sudden resurgence of conflict. The illusion of resolution is a dangerous trap. Pay attention, because the next gesture that seems heartfelt might actually trigger the biggest fallout yet. Meanwhile, Anthony and Mano experience a similar, almost mirrored rhythm. Anthony, exhausted from repeated performances, notices Mano giving small signs of cooperation. He interprets them as progress and eases his own tension. Mano allows small windows of connection but stops short of genuine trust. Both couples are caught in the same psychological trap. They confuse temporary compliance with true change. This is where patterns and past trauma conspire to keep the cycle alive, no matter how convincing the surface appears. Keep watching, because the smallest misread moment can explode into chaos. The danger of mistaking brief peace for actual reconciliation is everywhere. Luke feels encouraged, invests more, and miscalculates Madeline's responses. His generosity increases, but the affection remains conditional. Madeline's brief openness is treated as a guarantee, but it's more like a pause in a storm than sunlight breaking through clouds. Anthony misreads Mano's temporary smiles, assuming a truce, while she quietly observes, measuring his reactions and recalculating her boundaries. These moments highlight a critical truth. Transactional love, even when paused, is not permanent. Notice this because the next unexpected twist will test every assumption they've made. The comedy and the tragedy intermingle in these interactions. Luke misreads body language, Madeline misinterprets intentions, Anthony rehearses expressions for approval, and Mano keeps him guessing. It's exhausting but fascinating because viewers can see the loops before the couples do. But you find yourself asking, how many sacrifices, how many apologies, how much energy will it take before something truly changes? Peace bought with sacrifice rarely lasts, right? And yet hope persists, is fueled by every micro signal that is mistaken for genuine connection. Stay tuned, because the next revelation will challenge both their perceptions and the audience's expectations. Social media commentary amplifies the illusion. Fans celebrate any sign of warmth, any temporary agreement, as evidence that the couples are turning a corner. Clips of Luke and Madeline sharing a quiet conversation go viral, while Anthony's small gestures toward Mano trend in comment sections. The digital audience adds an extra layer of pressure and misinterpretation, reinforcing the false sense of progress. It's easy to see why the couples misread these moments. They are literally being validated externally for appearances rather than true emotional shifts. Watch closely, because the next conflict will test whether these breakthroughs are real or another trap. Even brief gestures carry weight in perception. A soft smile, a delayed critique, a shared memory, they are enough to convince the fixer that victory is near. Yet the validation seeker retains control through subtle adjustments. Madeline may nod, but she maintains boundaries. Mano may laugh, but she calculates responses. Each moment that looks like progress is layered with caution and internal monitoring. Luke and Anthony, interpreting these as emotional breakthroughs, continue to invest heavily, risking further disappointment. Notice this because the final dramatic payoff will hinge on the misreading of these temporary signals. What makes temporary peace so dangerous is that it encourages overcommitment. Luke's increasing efforts create emotional and financial pressure, while Madlin's brief acknowledgement lulls him into complacency. Anthony overextends himself, expecting reciprocal openness, while Mano maintains her strategic distance. The tension is subtle but building, and the audience senses it before the couples do. The calm is illusory, and the pattern predicts an imminent upheaval. Pay attention because the next moment will upend everything they thought they had secured. By the end of this segment, the audience understands the stakes. Every gesture, every apology, every fleeting smile carries double meaning. The couples are navigating familiar patterns, but the pressure is escalating. Temporary peace is seductive because it gives hope, yet it masks unresolved trauma, persistent fear, and the transactional nature of their relationships. The viewers are left asking, how long until this illusion collapses? How much more effort can the fixer give before the validation seeker retreats again? Hold on, because the final act will reveal explosive confrontations, shocking betrayals, and a turning point that could change everything. Luke sits alone, scrolling through old messages, the weight of months of giving pressing down on him. Every gift, every apology, every careful effort now feels like invisible labor with no return. The puppy he once bought to soften Madlin's mood now feels like a symbol of misread intentions, a small reminder that affection cannot be bought. Anthony, on the other hand, scrubs off his mime makeup in quiet frustration, replaying every over-performed gesture, wondering why Mano's smiles never translated into the "eed" connection he hoped for. The simplest gestures sometimes carry the heaviest heartbreak, and the audience feels it long before the characters do. The crescendo of tension isn't loud fights or dramatic shouting. It's in the silent moments where reality settles in. Luke's chest tightens as he realizes the emotional debt he's accumulated, each gesture traded for conditional affection. Anthony's reflection in the mirror is haunted by the memory of the mime performance, the effort rendered meaningless by subtle withdrawal. These quieter heartbreaks hit harder than any shouting match because they reveal the total exhaustion, the subtle erosion of hope, and the relentless nature of transactional love. Notice how the calm reveals more truth than chaos ever could. Every callback from earlier mini-drama adds weight now. The chewed-up puppy, the mime antics, the gifts and notes, all were attempts to secure love or validation that never fully materialized. These moments, once small and almost comical, now read as markers of a repetitive cycle. Luke and Anthony both realize they are trapped in a loop. The fixer giving endlessly, the validation seeker controlling subtly, each unaware of how much the other's behavior perpetuates the pattern. It's exhausting, heartbreaking, and shockingly relatable to anyone who has navigated one-sided emotional labor. Keep watching because the fallout from these repeated cycles is about to hit in the next episodes. The emotional payoff is subtle but devastating. The audience sees the cumulative consequences: drained wallets, frayed nerves, and the quiet erosion of trust. Luke's eyes betray resignation more than anger, a recognition that his efforts alone cannot change a fundamentally transactional dynamic. And Anthony's weary gaze in the mirror reflects the same truth. Effort without reciprocity is emotional bankruptcy. The couple's paths diverge not in spectacle, but in recognition of patterns, highlighting that love built on transactions is unstable, regardless of effort or sacrifice. Pay attention, because the next episodes will reveal shocking reversals, new emotional tests, and potential betrayals that could upend everything. By ending with these reflective but tense beats, the scene leaves viewers emotionally invested, understanding the psychological trap, and eagerly anticipating the next wave of drama. The quiet heartbreak now carries the loudest resonance, proving that sometimes silence speaks louder than chaos.